Okay, good evening everyone. Let's see if this works. Does it work? Okay, at least I can see that something is going on, but I cannot hear myself yet. Yes, and now I can. Good evening. Welcome to my not really technical stream, since today is going to be a summary of my 2 years of streaming, which will be partly technical since some people asked about the details of how my setup works, so I'm going to show that a little, and partly non-technical about how it works, how it began, and stuff like that. So I'm actually quite amazed so many of you came, because, well, my channel is usually technical, so I guess you come here for technical stuff. And yeah, and today stream is not really going to be too technical, maybe a little. So today's moderator is KrzaQ, whose nickname is here. That means I have my camera switched. Okay, never mind. KrzaQ, thank you for being here. Folks, if you have any questions for me, then just ping our moderator. Again, KrzaQ, yeah, his nickname is right here. And that way he will, well, let me know that there is a question. And I guess I will discuss my setup today, so you will know more why you have to ping him, and I'm not really watching the chat. Cool. So before we get to that random stuff, I decided to actually show on my live streams books which I'm either reading or I got, and technical books. I probably am not going to show non-technical books unless you want. Just so, not really talk too much about it. First one is The End of Error, about Unum computing, and that's by Mr. John Gustafsson. So this book is actually about, it's where, I guess, programming meets mathematics. It's about how to represent real numbers in a sane way on a computer, well, semi-real numbers. If you're familiar with the float format, how floats, you know, the double type, the float type, how they work internally, then this book is basically about the concept of unum, a unum being a universal number, and that's TLDR, a variable with float. So yeah, and this whole book is about it. I'm going through it since I'm a huge fan of how floats are encoded and how the problems around floats. So yeah, you know, I've written a chapter in my book about it, and there are quite a lot of details there, so I wanted to check this out, and maybe when I will be upgrading my book, I will mention also the unums, how they work, and so on. So yeah, that book is actually well written, and it's a pleasure to read it, even if you're just beginning with, you don't have no idea how floats work internally. I would actually recommend it because it's really well explained there, including approaches to explanations of computer math, which I never thought about, even though I studied IT science with mathematics and specialization. So yeah. Again, end of error. So I'm not sure about end of error. Actually, when I first page, I read the first actual page of the book. Let me just find it. So that's how to read the book. Yeah, here we go. And as you can see, because it's not really focused, somewhere here there should be a number. Somewhere here there should be a number. So I'm not sure about end of error, but there are some errors in print of this book. I already sent an email to the publisher asking them, hey, what's the number that should be there? I guess I can kind of figure it out, but yeah. So that's one thing. Then second one is a really old book called PC Magazine Programmer's Technical Reference. That's actually rather, that's not a thin book, that's a thick book. And it has like assembly instructions here. And this is an old book from the 90s, I believe. Let me check. 92. So that's an old book, and I got it knowing it will be old. It's by Mr. Robert Hamel. And I got it because it's what was referenced in one of the old papers about using cache for communicating between processes. So yeah, I thought I'm going to check out what's exactly in this book that was referenced in that paper. And I read the paper due to making one of 2 streams ago about Meltdown and Spectre. So I wanted to check that out. And the next one is actually Power Up by Matthew Lane, and it's about unlocking hidden mathematics in video games. And I have no idea what this is about. I just received it today. So, but it looks interesting, so I'm going to check it out. And just to be clear, I'm not big on math in IT. I always thought it's a useful tool in some cases, but yeah, I don't consider myself to be a mathematician, neither a hobbyist mathematician even. But I guess 2 of the 3 books are about math, so yeah, cool. So that's that. There's a question, 2 questions actually. I will quickly go through them. Przemysław says, I'm wondering if in case of a USB port in laptop failure, the official service will replace the whole motherboard or try to fix the port somehow. This is related to the chat we just had on YouTube chat about if your USB port fails, what can you do? And there aren't too many things which I guess aren't obvious, like try to reinstall drivers, see if Wireshark sees any packets going on the port, see if the chip for the USB controller is still visible for the operating system, and so on, and in the end, like even measure if the voltage on the 2 pins, 2 side pins of the USB is correct. But apart from that, I'm not sure if, unless you're a technician, you can do much more about it. So yeah, sending it to, if it's on warranty, sending it to the manufacturer and asking to do something about it might be a right choice. Now, what they are going to do about it, my guess is they're just going to replace the motherboard, and maybe they are going to have somebody look at the motherboard and say that, well, try to have this refurbished, right? Refurbished, what was the term? Yeah, I think refurbished. Anyway, so yeah, what they could do, they could try to run around the motherboard with some probes, some oscilloscope or logic analyzers, and try to figure out if it's like a problem with powering the USB part. Maybe the chip, which is the chipset for the USB, just got fried for some reason. Maybe it's enough to just replace that one single chip, which is probably like, I don't know, $2 for whatever they pay for it. And yeah, that's my guess. Maybe they give it to somebody who will try to repair it, but in the end, probably the cost of just replacing the motherboard will be lower than trying to spend a couple of hours to fix it. But on the other hand, I'm not really knowledgeable about the economics of how computer services like that, like repair centers work. Maybe they actually try to repair it. Can we know my favorite technical books? They are actually on my blog somewhere. My favorite book. Yeah, let's try to find it. I'm pretty sure I have it on my blog somewhere. Let me just find my browser. Here we go. Okay. So let's go to my blog, and I'm pretty sure I have it, but on the Polish side of the Mirror. Okay, sorry about that. I probably should. I'm currently writing new posts mostly in English, but I have some legacy posts which were for people interested in like what book should I get, mostly in Polish. So let me look for that. Blah, blah, blah. No, it's not my book. Yeah, this one. I'm going to, just translate it, I guess. Most of this is in English anyway. This is Silence on the Wire originally. And I'm saying originally because Michael actually wrote it in English and it then was translated to Polish, even though, yeah, he speaks Polish. Well, it made sense. I mean, he is living in US, right? Then Hacker Disassembly Uncovered by Nezumi, Chris Kaspersky, who sadly isn't with us anymore. This book is actually available for free since he made the first edition available for free. It's an old book, but what it does, it showcases how a certain structure or like thing in C++ or C look in assembly, and he does it in his book with basically all the basic features of C++, and I found it quite instructional, even though I already knew quite a lot about reverse engineering when I read it. Intel manuals, obviously, I actually read a couple of manuals. Well, you obviously don't read manual 2, apart from the beginning. There is a chapter at the beginning about the instruction and coding, and that I recommend on reading in volume 2. I read through parts of volume 1 and most of volume 3, though volume 3 has been outdated and is like even thicker than it was. So yeah, I would actually recommend reading Intel manuals. Yeah, I know it sounds weird. You usually use it as a reference guide, you don't read through it, but it's quite instructional. Hacker's Delight is another book which I would recommend. It's about low-level tricks on optimizing some math formulas, and I use math formulas like, I don't know, you want a super fast implementation of checking if a number is divisible by 7 in assembly for MIPS. So you look in that book, basically, and that's what the kind of thing they have. Like, there's a lot of assembly there. It's really good for low-level stuff. Then Microsoft Windows internals, obviously, if you're into Windows research, you just have to read it. The newest that you can get. Windows via C++ was pretty good. I guess, I'm not sure if it's up to date. It's also from Microsoft Press, I believe. Yeah, this is a Polish book. I don't think it was translated. And then another rather old book is Rootkit Subverting the Windows Kernel, which at the time was pretty good if you wanted to start driver developing with hacking in mind. Yeah, but it's outdated, really outdated. So yeah, okay, let's go back to this. And yes, these are the books which I like and which I would recommend. Where do you look for new books? Good question. It's either recommendations from friends. I think one of these which I have here is a recommendation from a friend. Then, or I just randomly get to know about it. Like the end of error one, it was actually mentioned in comments section of some Slashdot article about floating points. So that's that, and the last one was referenced in some technical paper which I read. So these are, I guess, where I mostly learn about it. Then, you know, also like people having Kickstarter campaigns for books on some technical stuff, I usually follow them and get them as well. They sometimes have really good technical books there, which aren't, you know, the usual technical books. Yeah. And yeah, and then I try to get them usually from Amazon, because Amazon ships to Switzerland, and it's the least problematic way. Get into cryptography and you will be all up in math, their best supervisor says. Yes and no, actually, because, for example, I play a little with, you know, applied cryptography, as in I look how people use cryptography when reviewing a project. And there isn't too much math there. You just learn some basic tricks, but you do not need deep understanding. You need to know the state of art, but like that RSA, for example, has this known attack, and this known attack, and these are the cases where this attack happens. But unless you do cryptanalysis on like trying to find flaws in the algorithms themselves, then too much math isn't required. Yeah, that being said, it doesn't hurt either. So yeah. Okay, let's go through 4 more questions and then we'll get to the topic of the stream. From Przemysław, have you heard about a bug in Ubuntu 17.10 which caused some laptops to break the BIOS in them? They just removed that Ubuntu version from the website for this reason. How is it possible? That's pretty interesting. I didn't know about that actually. Yeah, I would have to speculate. For something to break the BIOS, it would either have to reflash it or play with the settings. So I'm not really sure what did they exactly do. I would basically wait for the root cause analysis if they do one. Thanks for letting me know about that. I'm actually going to note it somewhere. Yeah. And later check it out. Could you please discuss your website setup? Did you write it by yourself? Okay, I can do that in a second. What makes it page by Enrico Martinetti, I guess that's how you say it. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. Is for true Windows kernel hackers. That's from Honorary Bot. I have it also on my shelves. Yeah, I agree. I also got it from recommendations from friends. So that's a good recommendation. Thank you. Any replacements for subverting the Windows kernel? I actually have Rootkit's Arsenal, something like that. Rootkit's Arsenal on my shelf. I didn't go through it yet, in all honesty. I have a lot of books which I use for, like, if I have a creative slump, I have no idea what to look into next. I just grab a random book and start reading random pages, and usually I get some ideas after 10 pages at most. So that's why I have most of the books. which sounds funny, I know, sorry. Okay, my website setup. My website, which is again my blog. Let's yeah, which you probably know because I sometimes show it, is written in terrible PHP plus HTML all in one file combinations and style, which I would totally not recommend. And it has like older versions, which this is the older version of the website. As you can see, for example, all my blog posts are on the same page because I didn't bother with making pages. Which I actually also like because I can like just seek through all of it, but I guess on mobile it loads for like 10 hours. Yeah, then the dashboard itself is a little newer, written a little better in PHP, but doesn't really work. Oh, it actually works. Oh, that's funny. I was going to point out my next Polish live stream here, which doesn't work, but it actually works, so I don't know. Which I always forget to update. I think I updated this dashboard last time in 3 years ago, 4 years ago, yeah. And then there is the random notes part where I just make, like commands I forget, for example, where I note them. This doesn't go into RSS, and there's some stuff which I just note here because I sometimes need it, and it's public basically. So like PHP quirks or whatnot. And yeah, and this is a new part, also written in PHP, but it's actually decently written, I would say. So yeah, I've written everything from scratch, which the best evidence I have that I've written this from scratch is this. Yeah, vulnerabilities found in my blog, and there were a couple of XSSs and a blind SQL injection, which actually was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. XSSs, I don't really care about XSSs because I have my admin panel on a different domain scheme and so on and ports, so XSSs on the blog don't touch my admin panel. That being said, the blind SQL injection was bad. So yeah, so even if you try to care about stuff being secure, you still tend to fail, especially if the quality is bad. Oh, Robert, thank you for the donation. Which reminds me that my script for handling donation is not here, so I should run it. Okay, which I guess leads me a little to the main topic of this. Sorry, let's do it like this. There's going to be, I guess, one animation playing for sorry, just let me run it. Okay. Yeah, there will be one animation for last week's and one from Robert. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Robert, again. Yeah, Robert, as you might remember, was the guest of 100th live stream last week. If you haven't checked it out, you should totally. And this is from last week because my script actually just goes through everything which the API serves. I usually run it before the live stream, so yeah, these animations happen before it's even streamed. Same for this one. This is from 2 weeks ago. Still, thank you, Pavel. Okay, so let's talk about live streaming. I'll get to the questions. Get back to the questions soon. So the whole idea with live streaming was basically like, can I do some video / tutorial / educational stuff for the community, which won't take too much of my time, because I do quite a lot of stuff, surprisingly. You know, I have a full-time job, right? I have a family, obviously. Then I wrote one book, wrote a chapter and edited another book. I do technical reviews for some magazine. I'm in like the panel for 2 conferences and some other stuff. So what I'm trying to say, I'm pretty busy, so I try to get the most things done in the least amount of time. And yeah, so I did videos in the past, only in Polish though. And I've done, I don't know, about 100 of them, I guess, maybe a little more on my Polish channel. They had really bad quality, and I'm not saying even about the recording quality or the video quality. That was actually, even the sound quality was a little quiet, but rather decent. The quality problem was because they were not edited, because I actually, oh, okay. Thank you to Robert's wife then. Yeah, thank you, KrzaQ. So yeah, that's a really nice donation. So okay, what was I talking about? Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, I was trying to figure out like how can I maybe improve the quality, and to improve the quality of the videos which are not edited is to edit them, right? But when you start editing videos, it turns out that actually one minute of video takes about 1 hour of your time. Even if you get fast about it, then it still might be like 30 minutes of your time, because you have to make sure that the audio is corrected, that like put the scenes together, do some transitions between the scenes and so on. So I did a couple of videos like that, and I realized that this is not the way for me to actually make more content, and because it just eats too much of my time. Yeah, so then I actually stopped doing videos for some time, and then for some reason I started watching some live streamers playing games mostly, and I was thinking about doing live streaming for coding. Then I chatted with a friend, with Masakra, who also like basically gave me the final nudge to, hey, maybe you should try live streaming with coding stuff and hacking stuff. And so yeah, we basically set up OBS. He was my first moderator, and it was still in Polish on the live coding platform. The live coding is now called Live Edu, I think. Yeah, it's basically, at the time, I don't know how it's now, but at the time it was a rather small platform where like, well, maybe quite a lot of people actually streaming, but not a lot of people watching. And for some reason, when my first 2 or 3 streams happened, they were quite popular, in the sense of a couple of hundred people came. And that was a little too much for the live coding. Like, the chat just crashed. Like, it wasn't functional. That's why we have an IRC channel, because Masakra quickly had to create it because the chat crashed. Then there were also some like latency issues and so on. I basically chatted with the owner of live coding and some people from that stuff. I'm not sure that the person is the owner. I think he's the owner. Anyway, and it's great to have be able to chat with exactly the person who can get stuff fixed. And we had a couple of, I think I did 11 live streams there, and in the end I basically was like, yeah, my viewers actually want me to move elsewhere, and but I like this platform, so maybe if at this stream everything works, the chat works, and there are no problems, then maybe I can stay, I can convince my viewers to stay. And yeah, so I run the stream and everything crashes. So, well, not everything. The chat crashed again, and some people reported latency issues again. So in the end, I decided that that I have to go to another platform. And yeah, we tried Twitch next. Twitch is, you know, I think it's owned by Amazon right now, and it's stable. It's super stable. Like hundreds of thousands of people are watching people play on some esport events, for example, right? And like for example, the last Counter-Strike major was almost 1 million people watching. So it's a stable platform. It just works. That being said, unless you're a partner, so you have a certain level of subscriptions, viewers, and so on, most of the features are disabled. And one of the features which was super important to me from the beginning is basically archiving the videos, and that wasn't really an option for me at Twitch at the time. So I think I did 1 or 2 videos on Twitch and then moved to YouTube. And YouTube was actually a really good a really good choice, because and okay, I'm biased, right? I work for Google, so yeah, I know some of the YouTube folks, and I might be a little biased, but YouTube just works. And as if you watched the Falcon Heavy launch yesterday, you know that YouTube is pretty stable, right? That stream had like 3 million, 4 million viewers and was just stable. So like a few hundred or like 100 on my stream was nothing. You can rewind the videos, which is actually really awesome, even during the live stream. As in, yeah, I'm talking now, but you can still rewind it. Then there is, you know, that 2x option and 1.5x speed option, which is pretty amazing, because if I talk too slow, you can just, if you are viewing the archived video, you can just, you know, speed me up. Then, yeah, auto archiving, that works. So there were like some features which I, as a streamer, was missing. Like for example, you know, having a tip jar from the community, that the super chat which Robert just used is and Robert's wife. That's a new thing. As in, super chat was added, I don't know, half a year ago in Switzerland. So yeah, but I'm happy to see that YouTube is getting there. So yeah, we stayed on YouTube, and eventually we created the second channel, which was in English. And I guess somewhere up to that point, Masakra was mainly the person who was helping me, and KrzaQ also joined. KrzaQ is today's moderator, by the way. Also a couple of more folks which you don't really see on the stream. You probably remember Disconnected, who is sometimes moderating on the chat and sometimes is... he was the moderator, also like getting questions and so on a couple of times. And also maryush, who serves more like a person who I can discuss ideas with. So there are a couple of people who joined and helped me with doing the live streams, which I'm super grateful for. And actually the benefit of having a moderator is that I can focus on whatever I'm coding and don't have to monitor the chat all the time. If there is 10 people on the chat, that's not a problem, right? If there is 100, then sometimes the chat goes rather fast. If there is 300, as it happens on my Polish live streams right now, then yeah, I'm really happy I have moderators. Thank you, KrzaQ, Foxtrot, Charlie, and Disconnected for being here. So there's that. I'm going to talk about a little about our setup in a second. Yeah, and then I basically asked the community if someone wants to join, because I was still looking for another person or two, and Foxtrot Charlie was one of the people who stepped up and started helping me quite a lot with the live streams as well, so thumbs up. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that from the beginning, I knew that when doing the live streams, I wouldn't be alone. There would be some people helping me, and I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, I don't know why, but getting the moderator was the first thing I was thinking of, and I was happy that Masakra at the beginning was also willing to do it. So that's that. Now going to other things. As you can see, I now have this fancy layout, right? The first live streams didn't really have this fancy layout. And the way this live streaming works basically is that you get OBS, which is Open Broadcast Software, which is an open source software currently in the multi-platform version. I think it's called OBS Studio officially. And it looks like this. I can actually show you. Well, some of you might have seen it. So yeah, now there's a nice, I guess, inception here. And yeah, the way it works is that each of the elements on the screen, like for example this or my webcam, is an element of a scene. If I can switch the scenes. For example, if I click talking, you see me now, and there's also a nice fade to the scene. Same here, and same with all the other streams. And then there are the elements. The elements, for example, is the layout, right? I can enable it, disable it. Now the layout itself is called a browser source. A browser source being actually a headless Chrome rendering into, a canvas. And it being headless Chrome, it means it's actually, you just create a website. So what I did, and I'm actually really grateful for Masakra for recommending this, because I think he did also the first layout, if I'm not mistaken, and then I basically got in touch with a professional artist to design a layout for me, which he's actually a webmaster, so I told him, yeah, just do a website which is exactly this resolution, exactly 1080p, and do fancy stuff there, right? I like the fancy moving cyber-like animations, so please do that. And what I got was, well, an HTML page with some CSS. Actually, the animation, like the moving parts, which are around there, here on the edge, right? And I think something else is here as well, and the fancy animation here at the bottom. That's actually all CSS. There is no JavaScript in that kind of animation, it seems out nowadays. So I was pretty surprised. I actually didn't know that you can do animations now in CSS, but yeah, turns out you can. Yeah, you learn all life. So yeah, it looks like this. There's quite a lot of it. The code quality isn't good because basically what I got from the graphic artist, which wasn't asked to code in a nice way, he was just asked to make it work as fast as possible. Then I added some nasty JavaScript to it. So let me maybe show you if for example, this one. Yeah, if I do something like ABC here, I can now in OBS make it refresh, and you can see at that corner there here, you can see that it changed. So it's actually really just configuring everything in HTML, and that's really, really helpful. So that's one thing. The other thing is you can actually script it, and I have, for example, all my moderators here, and also in OBS, if you have the names of scenes, I have this en suffix here, and for my Polish live streams this is the PL suffix, and thanks to that I know I can determine in JavaScript what language is the scene in, and what language should for example this be. Yeah, like here's is the question, and in Polish it might be pytanie, because that's the Polish word for question. Thankfully OBS actually has an API for that, so let me maybe find where it's actually, yeah, for example here, like window at event listener OBS scene change, and this function is called each time when the scene changes. So the layout, for example, can be adjusted, because when you see my whole face on the screen, then this border here, sorry, my camera is inverted, yeah. This border here isn't really needed, right? So it's has to be removed from the layout. Then I have, this brings me to, I guess, to the questions, right? I'm not answering the questions yet. I guess you can, this API isn't really, it's just a read-only API for questions. And this is our secret, but thankfully authenticated website for questions. So I have it open all the time, but apart from that, this jQuery script is actually querying the API for questions all the time. So if you ask a question, then the moderator takes it and puts it in our secret website, which isn't secret anymore. And it shows down here, right? Down here, down there. And it's animated, is rotated by JavaScript. So that's, I'm really actually happy that I can code it in JavaScript and it doesn't have to be coded in C or C++. Then I have a similar script running for the donations. If I can show you, I actually have a Python script based on the YouTube API examples running in the background. Here it is, which is querying the API, the YouTube API for donations all the time for Super Chat. And if a donation comes, then it has it stored in the script's database. And the script itself also acts as an HTTP server. I don't remember if I used the simple HTTP or it just like always replies with the same hard-coded HTTP header, not even realizing that this is HTTP communication, doesn't matter. Yeah, and the layout script also queries all the time, as you can see every second, this script and via jQuery and Ajax. And if there is a new dotation, a new donation, then the fancy animation appears, and the fancy animation is actually in JavaScript. So here we go. It's not too much. There's some code. The effect itself is based on Syndicate rules. I really like the laser projector projecting line by line an image thing, and it uses canvas and standard JavaScript. There isn't much magic here, but it's everything here is custom basically. So I know a lot of live streamers prefer to use made like ready to buy off the shelf script, and that's really a good choice, right? But given that I'm actually a programmer, I like custom stuff, so that's why I either coded most of the stuff myself or had somebody from the team do it. For example, maryush was coded by Masakra with some later changes by other folks. We also have an IRC bot which was coded by KrzaQ, I believe, and I think there are some other IRC bots we have on our channel. So but I guess I get to that later. Then we have a secret panel with questions. I guess I can show you it as well. It isn't super secret, especially that the questions, you see them anyway. It's like from who, the question itself, and we can approve it or I can remove it after I've answered it. So that's and it's coded, I think, in Python plus some JavaScript to make it so I don't have to refresh it. So that's the most of the coding part which we've done around how the live stream works. There is some more to be done to, for example, get the donations from PayPal, because there is still no animation hooked up to that, because PayPal API, I'm not sure I actually understand how it works, so I'm trying to figure out how to bypass understanding how it works. So the questions are on that monitor for me. Then I have OBS up on my top monitor, and on the other monitor I actually monitor the chat. I have both chats opened. I have a chat with my moderators, and I also have foobar. Here we go. This is the music which I have either a license or an agreement from the creators to use during my live stream, and well, you know, write these ones. So the way it works is actually in foobar there is I use a device called cable, which is basically a virtual audio cable. So there is an input which acts like, you know, like line in or microphone, however you want to call it. Line in is a proper way, and it has an output which is which is actually seen as a line in or microphone on the other side. OBS Studio actually sees the other side of it, the cable output, as an audio source and can use it to stream music. So this is how you get music. Oh, I actually forgot one more thing. I'm going to jump to the intro section. Don't panic, I will come back in a second. Yeah. Most of that is also HTML and JavaScript is basically the same file I showed you, but the rotating logo, it's actually C++, because I've actually created a plugin for OBS to handle animating the logo, because, you know, it's like 300 frames of animation, and I wanted to make sure that when the rotation goes full cycle, it doesn't like randomly click, because that wouldn't look too nice. So in the end, I decided that I actually need to code myself a plugin for OBS, a source plugin for OBS to basically be able to be sure that the rotation is smooth. The rotating logo was also I ordered it at another graphic artist who does 3D animation. And there were actually more animations than that, but I didn't hook up all of them. Let me see if I can show you some. Okay, so I don't have video files, but that should be fine. Let's go through them one by one. So yeah. Sorry. This one is it's 400 frames. Oh, that's the appearance of the logo, which happens at the beginning of the intro section. So yeah. And then when it's done, it jumps to the other animation, which is rotation. This, I guess, is the rotation animation. Yeah. So it rotates. There are actually quite a lot of frames here because I wanted to have it ready for 60 frames per second. And I think it's actually rendered in 4K. I need to double check because, yeah, you know, future proofing. Yeah, I'm currently streaming in 30 FPS. When I was ordering this animation, I think I was streaming in like 15 or 20. So I'm already using more frames, and I'm quite happy to have more frames. And then I have some animations which I believe I'm not using, which I maybe should start using. One is, this is, I guess, the logo starting to spin and maybe stopping to spin as well. So it starts slowly and then it stops. Which isn't too interesting. This one is probably more interesting. This is the logo disappearing, which I'm not using. I'm supposed to use it before the scene changes, so I probably should hook it up at some point. And there was actually also an intro animation, which maybe I should hook up. But in all honesty, I don't like it too much. I would prefer to have it. Maybe I should code something on some live stream, I don't know. Yeah, and then the same, it disappearing. Yeah, so as you can see, I have more animations, I guess. So that's, yeah, the C++ plugin for OBS, which was actually easier to write than I expected, is another thing, but there's a funny story which you probably already which you probably already heard about it, is like I load all the frames of the animation to RAM, and that means, and I actually decompress them as well. So I have all the animation decompressed in RAM when I load OBS. That takes actually, I think, like 10 seconds for me to start the OBS due to that. And that uses 15 gigs of RAM, I think. And when I started streaming, obviously, that means it was using 50% of my RAM. So I knew I had to optimize it. And so what I did, I actually bought a new computer, and now it's using only 12% of my RAM because I have more RAM. So that's also one way to fix it, I guess. But yeah, I should, I guess, I should optimize it someday. Yeah, so that's basically my setup for live streaming, if you're wondering how it technically works. Now, another topic is about the economy of live streaming, because I was asked this question not a lot of times, but a couple of times, like, for example, I think on last live stream, like, so do I consider like quitting my job and doing full-time live streaming? And the answer here is, and a lot of people, by the way, done it, like a lot of successful YouTubers done it in the past. So it isn't a stupid question to ask, it's actually a good question to ask. That being said, in my case, it didn't work out because having a stable job is what allows me to do the live streaming, because I actually spent already, I think, around $7,000 on live streaming, because, you know, I mentioned that I ordered the logos for animation and that costs, right? I ordered the layout to be made and that costs money. Then I'm doing some giveaways. I do most of them on my Polish live stream because most of the stuff I have to give away, like books, I get from, for example, Polish publishers, and they are in Polish. Yeah. I did some experience some time ago with giveaways on the English on this channel, and it actually worked out well, as in the packages which I sent out to people actually arrived at people. So I will probably be doing more giveaways if I find something to give away, obviously, on the English side of the streams as well. Yeah, but that being said, shipping something from Switzerland is expensive. And ridiculously expensive. For example, shipping a book is anything between 12 and 25 francs for economy, and that means it's about the same in US dollars. So yeah, I have, like, for example, a book which is worth $12, and then I have to ship it for $12. So after some time, you know, it starts building up, right? And I don't mind. Again, I have a stable job. I don't mind the expenses. That being said, I don't have too much income from the live streams. Like, I have the donations, which started, the feature appeared half a year ago, and I guess I got around, including the large donation, which I got 2 weeks ago, it's around $700 for now. Apart from that, I got my first payout from YouTube for advertisements from ads, and it was $120 for a period of 7 years. So as you can see, I'm not buying a yacht for live streaming soon. So yeah, so sorry, if you're thinking maybe I should start streaming and I can be rich, yeah, it doesn't really work that way. But again, I don't mind, so I'm quite happy with how it goes so far. So that's the economy side. Apart from that, yeah, I'm quite happy that I actually started also streaming in English, and after, I don't know, like, the difference in numbering of the episodes is around 11 right now, so I'm quite happy about that. A lot of people asked me in the past about that, actually. So yeah, it worked out well, especially that the English channel is actually growing way faster. Even though on the Polish channel I broke the 10,000 subscribers barrier a week ago, I still expect in the next few months to break it in the on the English channel because the growth is just faster. So yeah, so I'm quite happy about that as well. Now another thing which wasn't mentioned. Oh, there's a. I guess I mentioned two more things. First of all is that you as a community and viewers have sometimes great ideas and great tips. And what I didn't expect is learning a lot from you folks. And seriously, like sometimes I'm doing something and there's a message on the chat, hey, you should actually try this. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool trick. I didn't know that. Like, for example, cat, file, and then a dash. And that means first output the file and then actually read from the standard input. That's super useful when you're testing some exploitation stuff where the file is like the payload for the exploit, and then you just want to have shell access. And I didn't know that. So, and I learned quite a lot from you folks already. So thank you for being there. You also have good ideas, as in, for example, the missions, which today there isn't going to be a mission. Sorry, I actually started creating one, which is rather cool, but I didn't finish, and it does need some time computational wise, so next week. Anyway, so missions was an idea which I got from one of my viewers, and the missions is something I really enjoyed, and I've seen a lot of people try to solve them and also solve them and have great write-ups with some more tricks which I can learn from you. So I will go back to more missions soon, hopefully next week. Starting from actually tomorrow, all the streams should have a mission. A mission, if you're new to my live streams, is basically a CTF-like task to solve for, yeah, which is displayed after the stream. So that's the second thing I wanted to mention about. So yeah, I guess that's about it. 100 streams are behind us, and I like how the streaming is going right now, so there are no plans to do any major changes. There might be some changes in the form, because all the time I try to optimize the time it takes me to do the stream, right? Because currently in the ideal case scenario, I basically start preparation for the stream 30 minutes before the live stream itself. 15 minutes to do the setup, and then, you know, just turn on everything, like start the music, start the rotating logo intro. And that's fine. However, there are topics which require more time to prepare, and yeah, I find it sometimes hard to find that additional time. But yeah, so most topics might be topics on, you know, either easy to semi-advanced level, because that's just what I can do without too much preparations. And from time to time there might be also a stream which is more interesting, like for example the Meltdown/Spectre one, which I actually took several hours to prepare, and I think that worked out quite well. I got really good feedback after that. So that's that. Apart from that, I've done one 16-hour live stream. It was actually in Polish, and it was actually a double live stream with my friend who was we were doing a game, and I was doing the backend, he was doing a front end. In the end, after 16 hours, it actually worked, barely, and I had to use a lot of hacks to make my backend work, but yeah, basically the story is that I was, you know, like, yeah, 16-hour stream, like nobody will show up. And we were making a multiplayer game through the website for 4 players at most, and I was like, yeah, like if we have 3 testers online, that will be fine. So I'm just like not doing any thread synchronization, and I'm using a lot of threads. So what could possibly go wrong, right? Now, I think like 170 people wanted to play the game, and it crashed all the time. In the end, what I did is I removed all the free and delete from the program, which was the main source of race conditions, and yeah, and it just worked. So yeah, but there's a funny story of don't make weird assumptions when writing code. And in the end, it worked, barely. Anyway, what I want to try to say is that I liked the idea of doing a 16-hour live stream. A lot can be done and showed during 16 hours. That being said, I'm still trying to allocate some time to do someday a 16-hour stream for like 12 hours at least for the English crowd. Yeah, I hope to try it in somewhere in the next half of a year. Oh, that's interesting. I am not picking it up. Yeah, so I guess that's it. I'm going to go through questions now, and I guess we can finish early today. Okay, so from Zezo, advice for fresh graduate, job startup position, whether they get into security or as a developer for some time. Please talk about it. Yeah, advices are always hard because the person, it depends a lot on the person, like what background the person has and so on. What I usually advise is try to get a job while you are still doing the university, if that's an option, of course. That's not always an option. And that's usually when there is a smooth transition towards the industry. Yeah, the other thing, like try to get the job as soon as possible, basically. Any job and almost any job, but in the field you want to work in. And it's quite normal to change your first job to after a year or 2 years. I know that a lot of people do it, and that's quite normal because you grow into another position and maybe the company cannot really, give you the growth options you need. So yeah, that's normal, don't worry about it. Unless you're really happy at your job, then yeah, changing is always an option. Apart from that, I don't know if I can give you any high-level advice. Just email me. So if you yeah, we can discuss your case. Maybe I can give you some other advice, but yeah, it's on an abstract level, it's hard to give any good advice, and the advice I can give you isn't probably worth too much anyways. How do you manage huge C++ repositories? Personally, I don't really manage huge C++ repositories, so it's hard to say. I guess it's a question for KrzaQ, and KrzaQ should be the person to answer it. Yeah, that's all I can say. I guess if you're asking about my employer, then there are, just look up like Google repository and there are some articles on it, and I guess you cannot find bigger repositories than like large companies have, right? Did you get away from Adobe with editing though? So I didn't really use, I used Camtasia for editing, Camtasia Studio, or I think it's called like that, which is decent. I'm missing a couple of features there, but for what I need, it's easier to actually use than Adobe. I did try Adobe Animation Studio for Flash for doing animations, but it's not really what I need. If you know any good vector animation suite, and by vector I mean like technical drawings, then please let me know. Okay, guest, let's sum up. What was the good? What was the bad? What is going to change after 100 streams? The good and unexpected is that I learned a lot from you folks, which I mentioned. Thank you for the tips and that are incoming. The other good is I'm actually getting some both subscribers and donations. It's since we are living in the time of voting with your wallet, I'm actually treated as a really big compliment if I'm getting a donation. So thank you for that. It really motivates me to do streaming. So do thumbs up and subscriptions. It's the usual way you convince a YouTuber to do more YouTubing is by doing these three things. What was the bad thing? I guess I'm still trying to find the balance, or was the correct way to do things so they are cool and not time consuming and still have a decent quality, and I feel I'm struggling with that, so there is going to be some changes all the time because it's an ongoing process, right? Yeah, the bad was also like at the beginning trying to find a stable platform which actually works, but yeah, YouTube actually works, so I'm quite happy with that. And what's going to change, I guess I already mentioned that. Not a lot, but I will still be experimenting with the formula tool. From Przemysław, why some people get so emotional when they talk about which OS, browser, brand is better? That's a human thing, I think, but it's a question for a psychologist, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's like there are a couple of mechanisms in psychology, right, which explain like the behavior of I'm using something, so it's good, and I have to rationalize to myself that it's good, and if somebody is attacking it, the person is actually attacking me, so I have the feeling that I need to defend it. And there's also like if like for example the sour grapes effect of or principle, whatever it's called. But if something I cannot use something, then that thing isn't good because I cannot use it. So yeah, it's a human thing at the end, and yeah, usually grow out of it. But yeah, I guess most of us had their share of discussions of like, no, spaces are better, no, tabs are better, or Vim is better than Emacs, no, Visual Studio is better, no, C++ is better, no, Delphi is better, no, Go is better, no, OpenGL is better, no, DirectX is better, blah blah blah. Actually, yeah, I've went through my share, and on like different forums and internet boards, that's a common topic. That's the human thing. Wouldn't it be great if YouTube would allow live streams in WP9 codec instead of H.264 just for offline videos? I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it, as in I didn't run into any problems with YouTube from the technical codec side, so I don't know. I just don't know. I didn't look at the codecs at all. Maybe you're right. Maybe it would be great, I just don't know. From Łukasz, is that 3D or pre-rendered animation in the background? That's pre-rendered. What do you think about the fact that in Windows 10, Microsoft has actually switched from big releases to rolling releases, aka small evolution? Let's see how it plays out. I see both pros and cons, like everything. And I'm willing to see how it rolls out. I'm willing to see how the subscription model for Windows, as in payments, will work, because I expect Microsoft to tell us at some point that, hey, like, pay us every year $100 for Windows. I don't mind if I get updates and new features all the time. That being said, I'm also not a huge fan of having to reconfigure everything in my system after each creator's update or false update or anniversary update. And actually for OBS I have to do it every time, tweak some stuff after the updates. So yeah, let's see how it goes. I'm somewhat optimistic, I would say. What about the streams for beginners? Are you going to start it? Yes, I plan to start them, but after we start with the website, we're actually doing a website for live streaming with it will have some stuff which is related to our chats. By the way, you should hang out on our IRC chats. They are sometimes they are alive, sometimes they are not alive. The English one isn't too alive, in all honesty. Anyway, so yeah, first the website for the live streaming, and then I'm probably going to, when I don't have to spend my time doing the website, I will try to fit in the short live streams for beginners. Maybe new layout for next 100 of streams. Maybe, I think about it. But we should wait for, like, you know, hexadecimal 100. That's more fitting. Is that last showed animation saved as a series of JPEGs? Yes, that's saved as a series of JPEGs because it's easier for me to load it from the plugins for some reason. I don't remember why, but yeah, for some reason I thought it would be easier, and it is. why not get a sponsor and make promotional videos, example Gray-Chef for IDA or other tools. I'm not sure getting a sponsor is so easy. I don't mind too much. That being said, yeah, I'm not a great marketing person, in all honesty, since I tend to be, I always tend to say the technical truth, which means if something sucks, I'm going to don't like reviewing it at all, or will struggle of saying it sucks. So yeah, because I don't want to lie, but yeah, it's a great product. Yeah, I will say, yeah, this product by my sponsor is pretty okay, I guess. So so yeah, so I guess it might not work out with sponsors unless the sponsors creates, I don't know, IDA. I like IDA. So yeah, maybe X-Rays if you're listening. It gets a little more complicated also due to, you know, my contract with Google and some other stuff, but I wasn't thinking too much about getting a sponsor, in honesty. How much do you intend to pay for moderators? So this is a topic between me and moderators. You can ask them if they feel that if the exchange isn't working between us. Let me put it like this. Sadly, I'm not a company, so I cannot hire them full time, which I would love to do, but yeah, it's complicated. But yeah, chat with the moderators if you want to know more about it, if they are willing to chat about it. Did live streaming and all this business taught you anything? Yeah, sure. I mean, for example, not to look far, 1 week ago I had the live stream with Robert, and he explained how sandboxing works on Linux and details, how NSJ works. I learned, I knew some parts of it, and I learned a lot about NSJ, for example. I had a live stream with Mickey, and I learned a lot about Bitcoin and blockchain from him. I had a live stream about, you know, Meltdown and Spectre, and that actually forced me to prepare for the live stream. So I learned quite a lot about that. I actually knew most of the theory behind it, but still it was, you know, you tend to appreciate the details at some point, like the small bits which you learn you didn't know, even it's like, yeah, like a small thing, you turn to appreciate them. So yeah, quite a lot, especially technical stuff. SVG is great for vector graphics, or were you asking for IDs? So SVG is great for vector graphics, but true, I'm more asking about how to animate it. Like, you know, I was actually looking for Inkscape, which is an, it's an SVG editor, it's a vector graphics editor, right? But it uses SVG as the native format. And I was looking for a plugin for animation, and there actually exists one, but I would love to have one which is, I don't think it was maintained, or there was some problem with it. So yeah, but something like Inkscape with keyframed animation, I would love to have it. How do you see the future of software using safe principle like Rust is trying to do, or will most people still be using unsafe languages like C or C++? So we have a huge, that's from Dutch Ghost, we have a huge backlog of legacy projects which are already written in C, C++, PHP and JavaScript, sadly, which I don't consider to be safe languages, as you say. And we will have to deal with them a lot, and there will be still a lot of software created in these languages because these are the languages which people learn. Rust is a nice change, but that being said, I guess the example of Ada, which was also had like hard constraints sometimes ago, shows that yeah, there might be a huge crowd, well, sorry, a local crowd who really likes the language and creates a lot of stuff in it, but I hope we will see Rust adoption. I don't think we will though. So fingers crossed for Rust and all languages which have such strong demands on security. But let's see, like, you know, in the end people when creating stuff don't always think about security first, right? They think about it should work, it should be a product that works, and after some times when the product is already going, they like someone comes and say, hey, this is unsecure, and they say, yeah, we probably should think about security too. So if you approach developing a product like that, and this is a pretty normal approach, like a human approach, right? Then Rust might not be the default choice for this. That's my guess, obviously. Okay, so I guess that's it for today's live stream. I wanted to finish it early too, since it's not really deeply technical. As mentioned, the next live stream is going to be, as mentioned on chat, the next live stream is going to be about I'm going to basically show you some, I guess, my thoughts, tips, and tricks for how to approach coding competitions like game dev coding or size constraint coding. You know, the type of competitions I make for Gunveil's Winter Game Dev Challenge and Gunveil's Summer Game Dev Challenge. So I'm going to share some tips and tricks which I think make sense to think about. I've done my share of such competitions, and I guess won my share of such competitions too. So yeah, so I have some thoughts on it. So that's next week, and in 2 weeks we're going to do a funny little stream about, I'm going to play computer games actually on live stream, and these are going to be hacking games. So it's going to be a hacker playing hacking games. This should be fun. I'm probably going to be complaining a lot, like, so they say this is how hacking works, but no, it doesn't work like that. Like, expect me to say that a lot in 2 weeks. So that's it. Thank you very much for being here. KrzaQ, thank you very much for being the moderator today. And yeah, and see you next week. Happy hacking. And also, what game titles are those gonna be? I don't know yet. I'm thinking about upping maybe some other stuff, but like TIS 100, for example. That's a programming game, I guess, but I also have it on my to-do list, so we'll see. I'm going to choose something. If you have any recommendations, just send me a link on my email. Okay, so yeah, happy hacking, happy evening, and see you next time. Thank you.
the whole